breaking news here on Texans Today. We've had a lot of breaking news after a quiet weekend for your Houston Texans. I said it this morning after the Derek Stingley Jr. extension, that's what was holding up everything with this Texans free agency, and it looks like that seemed to be the case because the Texans don't make one. They make two free agent signings today after the Derek Stingley extension. We'll break those down. One that helps the secondary and one that I think can really help Stroud bounce back in 2025. Before we get into all of that, we are on the road to 30,000 subs, the road to 30K before the NFL draft. We need 2,026 more subs. We are chugging along. I told y'all, if we get to 30,000 subs by the start of the NFL draft, we will be able to go live for the Texans round one selection. So if that's something that you're interested in, if you want to help out a Houston kid trying to support his hometown team, go down and hit that sub button. We bring you Texans content 100% for free. Now, let's get into the first signing. Let's start off with the one that I think that can help CJ Stroud tremendously. And I know what you're thinking. Jakob Johnson. Really, Jeremy? You think he can help CJ Stroud? You think this is something that's going to help this Texans offense? I actually do. And I'll tell you why in just a moment. But my man Aaron Wilson, as always, he gives you the Texans news on Twitter when you need it. If you're not following Aaron on Twitter, are you even a Texans fan? He said the Texans are signing fullback Jakob Johnson to a one-year deal. Reunites him with OC Nick Caley, a former position coach with the Patriots, where Caley nicknamed the 6'3", 255-pound Germany native as the German Tank. And I think this is going to help out CJ Stroud because two things. One, it's going to help out the run game, which subsequently helps out CJ Stroud in the passing game because they're going to want to run more I formation. They're going to want to run more of the strong sets with a fullback and a running back in the backfield. And that's going to hopefully get the running game going just a little bit more. I know going into last year, I talked about, Joe Mixon runs a lot out of 11 personnel. So, one running back, one tight end, 3 wide receivers. He did a lot of that in Cincinnati. He did well last year, but I think he could do better in a new running scheme with new OC Nick Caley. And two, teams didn't really respect the Texans whenever they tried play action. They didn't really bite on any of the play action with Joe Mixon. They seemed to stack the box, and then with the play action, it really didn't faze other teams. If the Texans get a better running game in 2024 or in 2025 than they had in 2024, that's going to help CJ Stroud with those play action plays and hopefully those deep balls to Nico Collins. So I'm going to ask you this. We've already seen the Texans kind of mess around with the offensive line. Now they're adding back a fullback. They didn't have a fullback to start their 53-man roster last year. Let me know your thoughts. Do you think Joe Mixon will have a better year on the ground in 2025 than he did in 2024? Give me a yes. Give me a no. This is going to be the pinned comment on today's video. Let me know down in the comment section, do you think Joe Mixon will have a better year in 2025? I'm going to say yes. I think this is going to improve the Texans' run game, and I think the moves that we've already seen are those that are going to help the Texans up front be a better and stronger unit. Yes, Jeremy Chuggs is one of the top pass-blocking left tackles in the league, but where he was at his weakest, I would say, was in the run game. And now with the newly constructed offensive line, which I don't think we've even seen partially what they're going to do yet. I think they're going to draft multiple guys in the early rounds for the offensive line. I think all of these steps and new OC Nick Caley are going to benefit Joe Mixon, benefit this running game, and then in turn benefit CJ Stroud. Now, the Texans went ahead and they made another signing right after Jakob Johnson. They went ahead and signed Ronald Darby to help in the secondary, and I freaking love this move. They get him. Played with the Jacksonville Jaguars last season, 46 tackles, 0 interceptions, 9 pass breakups. Darby is an NFL veteran, and he's been around the block. He's like a doorknob. Every team's had his turn, and now it's the Texans' chance with Ronald Darby. Again, I think, this is a really good signing for the Texans secondary, and he's a really underrated signing because obviously the Texans are set up for success with their secondary starters, right? You have Kamari Lassiter, Derek Stingley as your cornerbacks. You have CJ Gardner Johnson, Kalen Bullock, and then Jalen Petrie as your safeties. This adds to that secondary depth, which was a concern last year because when Lassiter got hurt, when there was guys that were out in the secondary, the depth just wasn't there. The guys they brought in last offseason, they didn't cut it as good depth in the secondary. And I think Ronald Darby gives you this sense of security that you're like, okay, he's not a superstar, but we know he can hold it down in the secondary. If Lassiter needs to miss a couple games, I'm okay with Ronald Darby starting on the outside for this team. I think this is a really good signing for the Texans. I believe it came in 1 year, $2.5 million. So another cheap contract that Nick Caserio doles out, which I think could pay major dividends down the road. We're going to get into more Texans news and rumors and some interesting comments from Laremy Tunsil in just a moment. But first, got to tell you about our friends over at Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app out there with over 10 million active members. Hey, it's the month of March. And you know what that means. It's time for some madness. If you want to get in and win some money during all the college basketball games this month, get started today with our friends over at Prize Picks. And I'm not going to lie to you, folks. I've probably watched 1.5 college basketball games this year. I'm not going to pretend like I know what I'm talking about. But I have a couple buddies here at Chat Sports that are big hoop heads, watched a ton of college basketball, and I've been told this is a pretty good lineup. So you can use it, you can go against it. Just do it over on Prize Picks. Like I said, it's the best way to win real money all year long, watching your favorite sports. And it takes less than 60 seconds to turn your sports opinions into real money all season long. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. So get started today with our friends over at Prize Picks. Run your game. Now, a little bit more of, some housekeeping to do that I got to let y'all know of some Texans transactions that have happened today with some of the signings. They also went ahead and released a couple players from the roster. Anthony Averett, a cornerback. Brandon Hill, a safety who they drafted in the 7th round a couple years back, I believe, from Pitt. And they also waived Karis Jackson. So just a couple moves that the Texans made, while they also made a couple other moves, signing Jakob Johnson and Ronald Darby. I also came across this, which I know a lot of Texans fans saw. There's been, obviously some chatter, some rumblings after the Texans trade away Laremy Tunsil of the real reason why it happened. Why did the Texans decide to make this move? But I thought there were some interesting comments from Laremy Tunsil today. This is what he had to say. I truly understand it. It's a business move. No hard feelings when talking about the Texans moving on from him and trading him to Washington. He also talked about the feeling within the Texans organization, the locker room, is that they hit on almost all of their picks last year, which I'm guessing he's also referencing not only to Kamari Lassiter, Kalen Bullock, but also to Blake Fisher, which makes me think that Laremy Tunsil thinks that Blake Fisher is a good tackle in this league. He's obviously friends with Titus Howard, thinks that he's a good tackle in this league. So I think Tunsil might have seen the writing on the wall before any of us did, saying, hey, Blake Fisher played really well last year. They have him on a cheap contract. I obviously want more money down the road. It makes sense that the Texans moved on from me because they have two guys that are really good at the tackle spot. That's just something that I'm thinking of, if that's coming from Tunsil, which I do have to commend him. Very mature response from Laremy Tunsil, who was a former team captain for the Texans. He gave a pretty nice, shout out to Texans fans, the Houston community, on his way out of Houston. And I think he's really handled this with a lot of class, moving on from the Texans, going to the Washington Commanders. It also helps when you're going to play for a really good team in Washington that played for the NFC Championship game this past year. But I really do commend Tunsil for everything he said afterwards. And it is kind of eye-opening to see from a guy within the locker room for him to say something like, the Texans hit on all their draft picks last year, and it makes sense that they moved on from me. That makes me feel a little bit better than that Nick Caserio, the front office, made this move. I know I was probably one of the more critical, content creators out there around this move for the Houston Texans. I originally gave it a D+. I'm kind of sweetening up to it a little bit more. I'm not there. I still think I wish they could have gotten a little bit more for Laremy Tunsil in a trade. But at the end of the day, I'm kind of giving my grade around a C+ now for the Laremy Tunsil trade. Now, if this is the first video that you've seen of me, well, one, welcome to Texans today, but two, you probably haven't seen all the moves that the Texans have made. So I decided at the end of this video, I just wanted to recap all the moves the Texans have made this offseason. There is a reminder, before Darell Ogunbowale, they did re-sign defensive tackle Kirk Hinish to a one-year deal as well. They obviously made a really nice move trading for Christian Kirk, a 2026 seventh-round pick, to the Jacksonville Jaguars. They signed Sheldon Rankins, defensive tackle, one-year, $7 million deal. Braxton Berrios and Alex Earl, what's up? One-year, $2 million deal. They re-signed Derek Barnett, 1 year, $5 million. Tremon Smith is more of a special teamer, brings a little bit of depth into the secondary as well. 2 year, up to $7.5 million. Darell Taylor, yes, it's Darell. 1 year, $5.25 million deal for him. Justin Watson, another intriguing wide receiver. They brought him in. I believe that was on a 1 year deal, but we don't have the full details yet in our database. Jake Hansen, they re-signed him to a 1 year deal, $1.7 million. They traded maybe the best move of the offseason, Kenyon Green for CJ Gardner-Johnson. Wow, what a deal. They get another starting safety on this team. That was fantastic. They also signed a veteran guard in Laken Tomlinson, who's been in the Kyle Shanahan system before with the San Francisco 49ers. They re-signed Mario Edwards Jr. to a 2 year, $9.5 million deal. They went ahead and re-signed MJ Stewart, a safety, to a 1 year, $2.5 million deal. Nick Neiman to a 2 year, up to $6.5 million deal. Casey Tuhill, 1 year deal for the veteran defensive end. Ed Ingram, they traded for the Vikings guard, a 2026 sixth-round pick. So a guy with high upside, kind of like Kenyon Green, where just needs a fresh start. The Texans, a low-risk move by going out and getting him. The Vikings were probably going to release him at some point this offseason. And then the latest news that happened today, Derek Stingley gets a 3 year, $90 million extension, $89 million guaranteed, making him the highest paid cornerback on a per-year basis. Jakob Johnson, the fullback, signs a 1 year deal. And then Ronald Darby, the cornerback, signs a 1 year, $2.5 million deal. Quick reminder, if you want to continue the conversation, if you want to chop it up, talk some Texans ball, you can always hit me up on Twitter at Jeremy Chuggs. My DMs are always open. And if you made it to the end of the video, why not go down and hit that sub button? We bring you daily Texans content, 100% free. We have the best Texans community here on YouTube. So what's stopping you from going down and hitting that sub button?